Right, we're going to start with one of John's favourite grading patterns. That's this. I'll just put it in to show what we're going to tie before we start. There we go. That's a hare's. He calls it a tungsten hare's ear. Now you can't see the gold on that much because I've ribbed it in the same direction as the ribbing, I've wound the dubbing. But I've got two here, and one I've wound the other way. It's a personal choice. When you rib, if you rib in the opposite direction to what you wind the dubbing, you'll get a more pronounced rib. That's all it boils down to, really, yeah. And a slightly stronger fly. Just get a hook with a bead on. These are tungsten beads. This pattern, John first used this pattern in New Zealand. He was fishing there in Fast River, and it was the time when gold heads were all the rage, and he was using a gold head, but he couldn't get the fly down deep enough. And his friend, good friend, lifetime friend, Ron Clark, said, "I've got just what you want, John." And it was when John hadn't seen tungsten then, and so that tells you it was a little while ago. And so he put a tungsten bead on, and that made all the difference to getting down to where he wanted to get the fish. So I've prepared some of these materials so that hopefully I won't spend too much time messing about looking for materials. This, anybody who's seen me tie before will know, although it's called gold-ribbed hare, this is a gold-ribbed hare's ear. These days I never use hare, H-A-R-E. I always use fox squirrel. So that's because it's much easier to use. It's much it gives you the same colour, but it's much easier to use. Right, so we make a start. I always use Danville 6 thread. It's a personal choice. There is no set rules about fly tying. I mean, just because I use one thread, it doesn't mean to say that it would suit you. I know Colin uses a slightly different thread to myself, one which I don't get on too well with, but Colin finds it exactly what he wants. So it's much a personal choice. So the main ones these days are Danville's, UTC and Uni thread. So, and now the first thing, when you put a bead on, that wobble about. The first thing is we're going to put some thread under the area where the bead would be. Because the last thing you want, especially with tungsten beads, is it to be rattling around on there. Because if you do, the odds are that it's soon going to become loose. Because if you think when you're casting a fly, it zooms back, and then all of a sudden it's going the other way again when it's got to the back of the cast, and all that exertion, just build some thread up there until that starts to become just a slide fit along there. That's it. There we go.
Is that a B175?
Now this is a B830 build because one thing John says in his book is use a long shank hook. Now, when he first started writing, a long shank hook was a B800, you know, the 4X long. But in recent years, John really means a shrimp hook, a nymph hook. Because in one of his books, he did actually put the number, and it was the fulling mill shrimp nymph hook. So just push that up. And now that's not going to wobble at all on there. Now that's going to be solid on there. And I'll just prepare my dubbing. Can anybody see what's going on? As you take it out of the packet, it's no good as it is. You've got to fluff it out before it's any good for use. There we go. Just split that up.
Sorry, John, what?
Right, the next thing is to put your thread back on again. Just put it on there. And what we're going to do, the first thing is introduce some gold, oval gold for the rib. And just push it right up to the bead. And then as you come down, you'll flatten that all down, making it nice and smooth underbody. Why John went for the slightly longer shank was because it's to look like a caddis, a cased caddis. The original one he saw was on a standard shank, but and then his idea was that no, it really looks like a caddis.
Is that why it has a black bead?
That's right, yeah, it looks like the head of the caddis poking out. Okay, oh, we're still in shot, that's good. Right, I always use this spinning tool. It's just a hook, that's all. It's a hook with a weight on the bottom. That's all I use for spinning. Those who've known me for a few years will know that I make most of the tools I use, I make up myself. Because really, you know, you can spend a fortune on tools, but not for me, I'm afraid.
Is that bead a round bead?
Yeah, it's a round bead, John, yeah. No, it's flattened on the back. It's where the recess in the back is put on. Because people always say to me, well, which way do you put the bead on? Well, you don't put it on with the countersink forward, because otherwise it goes right over the eye. The idea of the countersink is just to get it round the bend of the hook.
Yeah, but that looks like oval.
No, you've got a rounded front, John, and a flat back.
Yeah.
That's what you're seeing.
All I've done there is I've made a loop, which I've now got in my hook, and then I've rolled a sausage of fur, and all we do is give that a spin. There's ready-made dubbing for you. And then that won't come off because it's all entwined within the thread. All you need is a piece of wire with a hook with something to catch the end of the loop in, then wind that on. You can wind it. This does eat up dubbing. There we go. There, that in there, behind there. 2 or 3 turns there. Okay. And then wind our gold rib. You can see that's sunk in quite a way. If you wanted to say be more pronounced, the gold rib, you can just wind the dubbing in the other direction before you start. You should always end with the ribbing going over that way. Whatever way you choose to wind your dubbing, because as it goes over that way, when you put your final few turns on, you're tightening the ribbing. If you come the other way with your ribbing, as you tighten it, you're loosening the ribbing off. So always end going that way. Right, and as we don't want to get too much varnish on the fur by putting the needle near it afterwards, just put some varnish down the thread, a couple of turns, and then if we put our whip finish on there behind the... You don't need to put any more varnish on there, that will do. So however fluffy you want it, you can see there's plenty of bits sticking out even if there, so that's... I think with the angle is getting the length. Is the proportions of the hook okay? Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, that's okay then. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there we are. That's putting Hare's fur on, and that's his. And he had his best ever bag of grayling using that. He had over 2 days. He had 7 grayling between £2 and £3.8 on the chalk stream in this country, not abroad, in this country. Yeah. And he regretted it afterwards, but he had the £3.8 one set up. I mean, that was caught at a time when that was the sort of thing to do, you know. And I've seen it in his...
Is the gold rib an oval?
Yeah, the oval peak, that's right, yeah. So there's our first fly, and tremendous grayling pattern.
What size hooks would you
I think that's a 14 I've got there, yeah. Yeah, because one thing I've learnt when I've been down on the chalk streams with John and that is how small you have to fish, really. Over the years, I'm getting smaller and smaller with them. So, I mean, we had Charles Jardine was fishing with us one day, a couple of years ago, and he was using a size 22 dry, and he was picking grayling off the top time after time with it, yeah.